Leave you guys.
Yeah.
10-15.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just pin back in. That'll be helpful. I've managed to leave my pen on my desk. Would you mind just
Brilliant.
that'd be great.
Also, just thank you so much for giving me this time.
No, it's very
I
welcome.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Part of our remit as well is just to, share what we're doing, so we're always more than happy to have these discussions.
Delighted to connect as well. Like, I know Matt as
Yes.
Barrett from Beatrice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's developing. I was just on Skype with him this morning.
Yeah, fantastic.
So he's literally replicating what we're doing here in Australia, and so any sort of
because
friends we can make it's
that-
all to the good, isn't it?
it would be great, and it'd be really interesting because I know that you've got the franchising kind of model, which I think is another great way of going about things. So as time progresses, it might be something that can be further in Australia.
Yeah.
But it's the Helen McPherson Smith Trust who was the
Is that right?
Same
Yeah,
concept.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're funding us, and when I started talking about this, and they go, "You've got to go see these guys," and it just happened that my wife's relatives are in Glasgow, so I'm over there, so I came over.
Yeah. It's great to see you.
It's brilliant. Small world.
Yeah, it is. All right, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, mate.
See you in a minute.
I've got this presentation. It's just, the reason I do it is just more structure, so I can send you a copy of this if you want, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But it's just background on the academy, where we came from and what we've been doing. I think this is probably as good as any. What do you know about us so far now? Quick question, just to kind of get a sense of. Thank you.
Yeah, I basically what I've read is that you have a place where the community can come together. My understanding is that they can develop solutions, that you have courses that they can kind of work out what they need as in the way of knowledge to do that.
No worries. Again, it's not a trick question. Just really just to kind of understand. I'll come out and sit beside you.
Yeah, I mean that's the basic concept. I've got to communicate community participation and solution development.
It's kind of it's evolved over time, but basically, our vision is for a society which combines economic activity with community benefit, led by dynamic social entrepreneurs. And the only thing we've changed is that last few words, wherever we may find them.
Right.
We're finding them in public sector, in the schools, among young children.
Yes.
The idea that an individual social entrepreneur is some kind of superstar that's going to go and change the whole thing, we're kind of saying, well, that's all very well, but actually it's everybody's job to get involved in this. And we find social entrepreneurs in all sorts of different places. Now, our bit, our mission, if you like, is to contribute to this through learning and development. We don't do consultancy, we don't do investment, business support, we just do learning and development. And I differentiate that from pure training, again, we'll come back to that. When the academy was set up, the guys who did the original business plan saw that actually the competencies associated with creating a business, a small business, community business, were all fairly well provided for in terms of business courses in colleges and universities and day programs, training stuff. The technical competencies, so project management, accountancy, etc. What wasn't being well done was leadership development, entrepreneurship as a subject, and an understanding and awareness of what social impact is, and how to articulate that to benefactors or to stakeholders. Another really important principle for us is that we don't provide training, we provide practitioner-led peer learning. Okay. So it's about understanding what's in the room, as opposed to talking at people or to people. It's facilitating peer learning with a practitioner. And it's a fundamental difference between ourselves and traditional education, and also between ourselves and traditional training. Okay.
So,
Ask any question.
So just with can you start describing the practitioner led those probably those two?
If you imagine one of our programs, for example, and we originally set up to support the individual social entrepreneur. So literally we'll have a group of 12, 14 people in a room, all of whom want to start a social enterprise in whatever areas they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
At the front of the room won't be a lecturer, it will be a social entrepreneur who's done that before.
Yes, right, yeah.
Okay, so we always make sure that the peer group in the room is a real peer group, so they're doing something similar at a similar time, and they have similar experience to each other. And secondly, that the practitioner has done what they're trying to do.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so it's about credibility with the person, but we also try and ensure that the practitioner is allowing discussion to flow, and doesn't take a kind of didactic approach, doesn't tell people what to do or what the best thing is. Usually the problem that the guy in the corner has, two people in the room have solved themselves. So it's about eliciting those discussions and those support groups and those networks that will evolve over time, and the relationship that gets built there isn't about 12 individuals. This 13th project emerges of these people helping each other, which is quite powerful.
Yes, yeah.
So on the leadership course, we would, for example, we run a programme for colleagues in the building who is a membership organisation for all the chief officers in the third sector.
Right,
Okay. Yep. So we run it for 6 years, 15 chief officers per year, and we make sure the person at the front of that room has been a chief officer of a third sector organisation. So may not have started it, but they've run a business, you know. And that way, again, the discussion and the credibility is all around.
That's fantastic.
Okay. Now, one of the key elements that we try and, a kind of USP, if you like, is if you imagine a low level or a high level, what we would call safety or support in the room, and then a low level, high level of challenge in the room, okay? What we're trying to say is that peer groups get together and they're here to start with. Low level of support, low level of safety, but low level of challenge. There's not a particularly challenging context. And what often happens in learning all these contexts is that people introduce a high level of challenge before there's a high level of safety. So what we're trying to say is every time we have to go here first and then go here.
Yeah, right, okay.
And this is where the learning takes place, where people can chunk into this room, into this space, the thing that they woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning worrying about. Okay? And if you're starting a business, that's going to happen.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So we're trying to say this is where the real learning takes place, and somebody is absolutely anxious, not sleeping great about something, and 2 or 3 other folk in the room have had it before, and they're going, I know where you're coming from, mate, and this is what we did.
Definitely. How does this happen in Young?
In reality, that's probably something that Sam can talk to better in more detail than I can. Great question, and it's something we would never describe articulate in the room, but it's what has to be achieved in the room so that this can happen. So we run CPD for all the tutors, and this is one of the underlying principles that we're talking about.
Fantastic.
Is to create safety, not dependence, but safety.
I like two things I like about that is one, within this thing is if from the practitioner's mind, and from your education service or whatever training, if we remain the centre of everything, then we're the bottleneck of everything kind of thing. If you can create an environment where solutions can live in the community and grow, then it's infinite almost. Absolutely. What's possible. And this part, particularly for refugees, which I'll need to point out, is trust and safety.
Absolutely.
Are those, and probably for everyone really. I mean, but particularly for those people, their idea of authority, the system, information giving, all these kind of things are
absolutely huge. So again, having a practitioner at the front of the room who's been there and done it. We were talking, and again Sam knows more about this than I do, but with the British Council, to working with a group of refugees from Syria in Jordan, I believe it was, to try and use social enterprise as a vehicle to support the individuals who, as you say, will be staying there for quite a long time, they're not going to be leaving anytime soon. No. So very capable, diverse group of folk. What can we do in this kind of context to look at social enterprise solutions for themselves?
I'd love to hear more about that.
So again, Sam's been working with them closely on that, and there was some funding applied for. So you just mentioned Syria. which didn't come through, but British Council are still keen to do something with us. Now, we also use action learning groups, sets. Have you come across that as a concept?
I have come across it, but
Okay.
I'd like to hear more about it, yeah.
Again, it's that same principle that the issue holder, the person who's going to talk about their particular issue in the day, is the person who has the most knowledge of their issue and the most likelihood of solving it themselves. So we use a fairly formalised version of action learning sets, which you can find online. You know, there's all sorts of flavours of it. One of the key principles is that we suggest strongly, which don't allow, but it's a bit strong. We try and structure it in a way that people are not encouraged to give any suggestions to the issue holder. Okay, they must ask insightful questions from their point of view. And occasionally at the beginning we'll actually allocate. So you imagine the issue holder sitting there, maybe 6 other people in the room. We allocate a role to the other people to say, think about it from a stakeholder perspective, think about it from a board perspective, think about it from a client perspective, and start asking questions from those different routes, or generic, it doesn't matter. The person will spend a couple of minutes describing their issue to start with. Somebody will feed back to them, what I heard you say was, is that a fair reflection? And they'll negotiate on how they want to describe it. And thereafter they'll literally go around the room asking insightful questions about that issue. And the action element of it is they come back the following month, week, whatever it is, the time delay, and tell them what action they took, which question had resonated the most, why they took it, and what happened.
That's really great.
So it's quite powerful from a learning point of view. And what's really interesting
is that, can you just, the philosophy behind that is that, what is that? Is that you don't? It's best where people come up with their own.
Yeah, it's about removing the dependence issue. So if you've got a consultant sitting there telling the person what to do, the next time a problem occurs, back to the same consultant. So the principle is, you know, that we've all got experience that's relevant. And what's really fascinating to watch is, if you imagine an issue holder sitting there, I've been there before, done it, I know the answer. I'm literally leaning forward. Other folk are being thoughtful. A couple of questions come in, and a couple of rounds of questions go round, and the person who knows it is sitting further and further back thinking, shit, I didn't think about that, I didn't think about that. So even the person who's had that experience suddenly is, in most cases, starts thinking about it in a different way.
Wow.
So learning's taking place all around the room.
That's amazing.
Doesn't suit everybody. Some people find that, you know, tricky and a bit counselling-like, but the overwhelming responses we get are very, very positive. It's a powerful way of building capacity and building capability and supporting people to understand. My most favourite quote, which comes up later, is people, even chief officers who've been running businesses, say they started the course as a manager and finished it as a leader. And they start thinking of themselves in different ways in terms of leadership, stepping into a role. It's very powerful.
And I think, you know, that, you know, just having an environment where to listen is an important part. It's just fantastic.
Now, that's why I just stick. This is what we do. This is how we do it. Happens to be accredited.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, and again, that was contentious to begin with. Some board members felt that wouldn't be appropriate. Others felt it was important. What we've observed with a lot of learners is that at the beginning of the programme, they're not fussed about the qualification. That's not why they're there. They're there to learn about building the business. Midway through, they realise that some really significant learning has taken place, and that they would like to have something to show for it. From my point of view, I usually encourage clients, because we sell this stuff to organisations that can afford it. If they go with the qualification, it completes the learning cycle. People reflect on their learning and write it up. If you don't reflect on it and write it up, there's a chance that it just becomes a fun experience. So we try and encourage folk to go with the qualification because it tends to complete that.
Now, with the action learning part, that's something at the moment, particularly say for refugees in a new environment. The actual and what I'm kind of, there's a few things that are coming out of this fellowship is action for one binds people. So when people act together, there's something that occurs more than if it's just a cerebral relationship when we're actually doing something together. For asylum seekers and refugees, obviously action in a new environment I've watched guys. We teach them English. They'll sit at this table, and 6 months later they can't even ask for a pen. But you put them into work, and in 2 months their English just goes through the roof because there's this action happening.
Absolutely.
And they understand the message. So if you're picking up this cup and go, do you want a cup? They put the bits together. Yeah. Whereas if I'm writing up on the board, it's a lot different. Yeah. So I'm also interested in how the action part. So are they, when you're saying they're putting together ideas, is it just theoretical, or does it go deeper than that, or is it the action more within the relationship within the relationship of the group?
The action element is the fact that they're going to take something and do something with the discussion. So action learning set. It's probably worth reading about that just in itself in terms of the principle of it. All of what we're doing is about the practice of leadership and the practice of entrepreneurship. It isn't about a theoretical model. And although the courses are well structured and there's content brought in at various points to illuminate discussion and put some models in that make sense to folk that may be helpful, it's all about how do I improve my practice as a leader and what actions do I take. So that's where the action comes in, and it's reflecting on those actions. So doing a presentation to a funder or a stakeholder or a client, how did it go? What went well? What was tricky? What could I do differently next time? Creating that mindset that says I can learn through practice and learn by doing, rather than some form of sense of this is how you do a presentation. Here's because that's just bullshit.
Yeah, I know. I like that very well.
It's about saying how do you do it? How are you going to do it and still be authentic? In terms of selling your business or setting it up, or
what it seems also you're doing, which I found is sort of something I'm learning is risk and failure are okay, because you're also saying try something out. If it doesn't work, you learn from it, rather than here's the theoretical model. It's got to be done like this, perfect, or else it's not right. And I find in the social sector, particularly in Australia, we are very conservative about failure. No one wants to talk about failure. So when things go wrong, everyone just shuts up about let's move on to the next project. And
I think the UK is similar to that in general. I think there is that sense that it has to work, and there's got a good reason why it hasn't. America's far better than my understanding. It's saying, okay, you've tried, you must have learned a hell of a lot, let's try again. So we were trying to, as an organisation, we would support that. But there is a culture, I think, in the UK generally that if you provide appropriate business support, consultancy and investment, the good guys will make it happen. And what we're trying to say is actually there's a lot of good guys out there that just need a bit of support to go from here to here. And then it'll work.
And it needs to, that kind of learning is because every situation's unique in its environment, culture, and I think that's really good, particularly if you are dealing with people from different cultures, having their own way of looking at a challenge. And one of the things we've been coming up against is language. So even when we do our strategic planning, which we've worked out, when we say what is the impact we want to create at the end, what do we want to see at the end, as soon as we create that, we've basically written a story, and then we go to these guys, asylum seekers, and go, what's your opinion of this? And through this integration we've been having, they've been saying, you've already written it for us. All you're doing is just want us to agree with you. You're not going to, if you change anything, it's going to be these little things around the edge. And then you start realising why things aren't working in the humanitarian sector, because it's like, of course this would be what everyone wants, isn't it? Like everyone should live independently. And the guys are going, well, maybe we don't. Maybe we're community-based people. And then you start going, oh, okay. But fantastic.
So, I mean, and also I think the other thing in terms of your kind of understanding, our work in terms of community-based organisations tends to be in rural contexts, where there's difficult financial realities. So the demography of the client base is individuals starting a business who may see a real market there and actually say, I'm going to start a social business in this context and I'll sell my stuff. Community groups who might have no paid staff coming forward saying, well, we want to do something on a sustainable basis. And certainly Scottish Government have asked us to support the wider third sector to become sustainable by using these tools. But also we'll run, well, it comes up here. These are some of NHS, we've done some work for them as a client. The idea is that we want to sell what we do so that we can remain sustainable ourselves as a social business, but also so that we can develop excellent stuff that competes with private sector business, so that we can deliver that to the third sector, because it shouldn't be good enough, it needs to be excellent. So we've, these guys tendered work, Kimball's another big social enterprise, Scottish Government, we were the only third sector organisation, social enterprise, to win work for the government for their own consumption. 35 businesses went forward on a tendering basis, and there was 4 selected. We were on that framework, along with some really big UK-based companies. So we've tried to say we need to compete at that level so that we can deliver excellent stuff. Development Trust, are you speaking to them at all?
No, I haven't actually.
It's worth that, if you can get a chance. That's a UK-wide organisation. There's a Scottish flavour of it. But they're doing work with community groups and building capacity and doing the consultancy bit of it. So we work with them to deliver our stuff to their community groups. We don't have any staff who deliver. We just use the practitioners. So we genuinely pay people on a daily basis to deliver our stuff. The team we do have are focusing on sales, marketing, programme development, so that the practitioner can be trained and can turn up on the day with minimal preparation, because here's the day plan, here's what's happening, here's what you do.
What's the experience for the practitioner? So how does the recruitment and all that happen?
We've got a big waiting list now. In the early days it was just knowing the people who were in the sector, who were tuned into and sympathetic to people's learning and development, who happened to be good at their job. Now we would run a programme, a tutor training programme, which is basically a qualification and facilitation skills, and people would apply to go on that, and we would then select from that group the people that we feel were most suitable and tuned in. So we'll be running that in Australia quite soon, actually, along with.
So that's in Shepparton or something, is it, or do you know whereabouts in Australia it was? I know it's in Victoria. I'm pretty sure it's in Victoria.
It is, yeah. It's just north of Melbourne. Matt's the guy who's going to be running the main thing. Sam's going over as well, along with one of our key tutors, just to get things kicked off.
Okay.
And that'll be aimed at young people primarily, or initially, and then it'll move into the adult stuff as well.
And
we were working with one of the community houses, Morrison's.
Right. Okay.
Which you probably come across.
Yeah, I'm from. Our sector's not a mainstream sector,
right?
And I've got some understanding of the mainstream,
right?
But I know when Lynn from Helen McPherson Smith Trust, whatever it is. She was him and was saying, and I think it was Shepparton was saying, because I guess Australia's similar when you're looking at those rural, regional areas. That's when things are going hard for everyone else, they're particularly tough out there, and it's just not the opportunity. So this very,
Scotland's tiny by comparison. You know the size of Scotland. It's just, but this area up here is rural, so it's about half the geography of Scotland, and it's only got 500,000 people. But we've delivered in all these places. So again, the idea is to take the learning to where people are, rather than transport folk off islands to mainstream. And I think A, it's environmentally sound, but B, people are in their own environment. The safety thing comes back again. They're not feeling like they're being told what to do. Typically we'd have somebody, a tutor from up here, deliver over here. And so we're not having a central belt solution where the people from the capital are trying to tell you what to do. It's quite, let's create this model so we help ourselves.
So how you would identify a community some particular way?
Again, normally that's just connecting with other organisations that are on the ground supporting those communities. So rather than try and market directly to the communities, it's almost always word of mouth, where people will say that course is worth going on. We had a target to the initial 3-year programme. It's European funded, so it's fully funded programmes, which normally in the central belt we have to sell the programmes. but in this case it was fully funded. I mean, a target of getting 300 learners over 3 years to engage in the process. We had about 620.
Wow.
96% of folk are saying recommend it to a friend. You
Mm.
should get on this course. So the numbers are pretty high.
That's true. Do you think, and I don't know around your culture with Scottish, thing, do you think there's a strong community sense in Scotland, or is it like Australia that's gone the way of America in that we're quite individualistic?
I think Scotland has still got a strong sense of community, and it's quite different from England. And again, if you've watched the recent election results,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite a dramatic sense of there's a majority government in Westminster,
Mm.
and there's one of their MPs in Scotland out of 59.
Mm-hmm.
So with practically zero presence in the Scottish context,
Mm.
there's a lot of that. Again, different people have different opinions, but there's a sense that education, mutuality, these things have grown up in Scotland. So the Church of Scotland was the first one that had universal education.
Mm-hmm.
The mutual movement, cooperatives as well, got a strong history in Scotland. So social enterprise is just another natural progression of that.
Yeah.
And you do get a sense, you've got obviously corporate stuff as well, but there's a strong sense that it's a movement within social enterprise where people are seeing this makes sense to combine economic with social. And in fact, the new First Minister for Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has just tweaked the economic policy to say it needs to be economically viable, but it needs to be socially thoughtful as well.
Mm.
And suddenly you've got these two things at
Mm.
the core of it. And she's actually put in charge a health economist, somebody who's been doing a lot of research into the health impacts of inequality,
Mm.
in charge of the economic policy.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than it being a financially driven
Mhm.
thing, this person has been looking at why is it in Glasgow this postcode has got a death age for men of 85 as average, and the one over here a mile away has got an average of 55.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compute employability and the health determinants?
I think too, like that. There was, we had the 70s and that, and then we had the Thatcher time. And
Absolutely.
And I know what I've found and what's really giving me hope, and I don't know whether this is to do with global warming and things, but that the young people coming through.
Absolutely.
And you look at organisations now, like big banks and all that, they have to have this social thing, and it's basically a lot of it is to keep their staff.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the young people are like, no, I just don't want to be doing just that anymore. I want to have this thing, and this social entrepreneur person. I think it's an exciting time to really cement that kind of movement and get some of the stuff that was lost.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think also the corporates will respond.
Mm.
As you say, for keeping staff retention or for giving folk purpose in their work, because they can't not respond.
No.
So, some folk in the movement think that the biggest impact we'll have is actually positively influencing corporate, because the scale that they have is massive.
Yeah.
So it's interesting times. Let me just check. This is just the fact that we're having a quality product behind the scenes.
Yep.
With an inspection from the people who inspect schools, and every year they inspect 2 or 3 third sector organisations to say how's it working, quality, etc. And we did very well in that.
And how do you kind of keep that quality control happening when you do have people
very hard.
just first? Yeah.
We've done a lot of evaluation after the fact, so we look at the impact of the learning, and we get feedback from the learners. We also have a CPD process for the tutors where they observe each other and will feedback to each other how they're doing in their own practice. And they must get a qualification which is based on a certain amount of practice and observed practice and observing others.
Okay.
So we've tried to build the quality into it, but obviously at a distance of Australia, again you've got the same principles. How are you going to manage that? So it's not easy. We've just had...
How long did this take you? This is a massive amount of work, isn't it?
Huge. And then trying to replicate it is a huge amount of work, and people don't quite realise. Let me just... Barbara just sent something through for an evaluation. This is it. So from the evaluation, the 450 learners or something it is, we're looking at transformational learning. So on a retrospective basis, 96% of people who have done the leadership programs are enhanced performance. 93% are talking about that from an entrepreneurship perspective. Reframe thinking, 95%, 96%. And then profound shifts in beliefs. That's huge.
That is massive, yeah.
You know, so this is independently done by Glasgow University's Training and Employability Research Unit, and across a wide range of folk. So that's, we're kind of looking at the quality from an outcome perspective. You know, if we know this is happening, and we know roughly in broad terms this is the kind of numbers we get. It doesn't suit everybody. Some folk, you know, you get the one or two folk who prefer theoretical academic learning, but the vast majority of people that we encounter are stepping forward and really engaging in this type of stuff.
But I think it's important too is you can't be everything to everybody.
No.
And you know, if it's about the quality that you believe, this is it, then instead of dumbing it down or spreading it out, it's just best to focus. I think.
So I've had some discussions with chief execs who've said that this isn't for me, and I've basically concluded with them in saying, thanks for the feedback, really get what you're saying. We're going to keep doing exactly what we're doing because the type of learning that you engage with and like is massively available across there in every university and every course you go in. You can get that kind of learning anywhere. This stuff is a bit different, and we're going to stick to our knitting because it does suit a large proportion of people. So I wanted to kind of connect with that.
That's excellent. So when did the organisation start?
2004.
Okay.
And we're currently turning over about £1.2 million, working with about 1,000 people a year. In Scotland.
That's excellent.
We've borrowed money for the first time to try and get this non-Scottish replication going, which is what Sam's leading on. He can tell you a little about that. And that's starting to get a lot of interest. And again, I think what we've seen from a social enterprise development point of view is that most places we're seeing focus on business support and funding. So when we do go in and talk about a learning and development approach to augment these things, it's a gap. And because it's using local practitioners, the thing I hadn't realised until we met with all the tutors, but the impact on the tutors, so the practitioners who are tutors, of which there are 20 odd in Scotland, their practice is getting much better because their self-awareness, what they're learning and what they're reflecting on their practice as they go through is phenomenal impact on them, and then it's kind of filtered through. So the proposition to England, India, Australia is we'll come in and support 2.5 staff, it's not a massive staff contingent, to support practitioners locally deliver something in this way, and it'll be a UK qualification that comes with it if that's of interest. And so far we've had a lot of interest.
Oh, I reckon you would, yeah.
So
the time's right for something like this too. You know, it's, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe not so, but now it's...
I think you're right, there's enough people looking at collaboration and doing something different, and also engaging people and using their own strengths. And I'll just leave you with that one. This is my 2 quotes that I really...
Yeah, and that's...
so it's not deficit based, it's strengths based, and it's transformational, this idea of... And people in Scotland don't use this language. You know, this is not a Scottish culture thing. We are, it was okay, it wasn't really...
Yeah, look at you,
I can't feather, this kind of stuff. It's a big...
and I think that would suit in Australia. I think we're still a lot like that, and we're trying to change that. But that
you don't want the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah. But I think within which we're looking at it as in the refugee sector is, and everything, people are defined by their deficiencies. So you're a homeless person, you're an asylum seeker. And you just wipe out a whole person's past experience, everything in just one term, and if the first conversation they're having is about their strengths and about you know, you think about a refugee, what they've had to go through
Absolutely.
to get here. That's where we're beginning, like looking at people like that.
Yeah.
And this is within the sector. This is, forget outside. This is
Yeah.
how the sector looks at them as well. It's
There's also a mechanism by which we get paid.
exactly
Your deficit is how I get paid. It's like,
exactly,
whoa.
and how I can sit up here and you can sit down there, and
There's I don't know if you're meeting Gordon later, but Gordon went along to a refugee discussion in Scotland on our behalf, looking at how social enterprise could be integrated there. So there's a couple of civil servants in the Scottish Government who are leading on this work and looking at the various aspects around education, social enterprise, transport, all the stuff that can meet the needs of refugees. Another thing that struck me that might be of interest to you has just come in, which you may have heard of already. I don't know what to do with it yet, so it's still in my inbox. But this ULAB, have you come across that?
no, I haven't.
Have a quick read of that. I'll just get Sam. I don't have to jump
Yeah,
into
sure.
that meeting, but feel free to click into that overview if you want to. I'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Not at all.
Fantastic.